Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brendan, how has Congress made it more difficult for the ATF to do its job in making sure that firearms don't fall into the wrong hands?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. It's any agency can do more with more. As far as our appropriations, right now we're $20 million in the hole for this FY under a continuing resolution. But the spirit of ATF is to do whatever we can to always protect the public and serve the public.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, because I know your commitment. I was a local mayor. We did joint task force with the ATF.
In Newark.
I'm really been impressed with your agents and their commitment. But I cannot tell you how many people from your agency, this is the word they would most often use, is that your agency is starved for resources, and you could be doing a much better job in keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. Local communities like mine, I live in the inner city of Newark, New Jersey, we see guns pouring into our communities, and we have found that a significant number of them are coming from a very small group of retailers that sell to criminals or to straw purchasers. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, the data is that we know the research shows that 1% of licensed dealers supply a whopping 57% of the guns that are recovered in crimes. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes, Senator. That's a study, I think, that's over 20 years old. I would not agree with that statistic today.
Okay, but you know that it's probably, do you agree that it's a small amount of retailers that are often providing illegal guns into sourcing illegal guns? It's a small group. It's not the majority of retailers, but there are certain groups that are, certain retailers that are more prone to give straw purchases and illegal purchases, yes?
Yes, Senator, most of the federal firearms licensees are very hardworking, law-abiding citizens. At ATF, we developed 6 years ago a business model called Frontline. It's intelligence-led, risk-based. So we look at all data to see who would be like your troubled dealers,
right,
and we put them as a priority. I established a top 100 list on FFLs to be inspected throughout the country every year. And so it feeds to what you're saying, is like focus on the businesses that are not compliant with federal law, allegedly, and that we will target them for systematic inspections. And if the allegation is credible, we'll go after them with criminal investigations.
And with more resources, you could be doing more.
Yeah, I can't sit up here and lie to whether you're Democrat, Republican. Yeah, sure. ATF, we could do more, and a lot of the police chiefs. And to your experience as mayors, I get hit up all the time saying, hey, just give me 5 more ATF agents here. Chicago, when I launched 20 I got calls from police chiefs.
I want to underline that, highlight it, that it's very frustrating to those folks who are trying to prevent crime in communities like mine with gun violence, where overwhelmingly, when I was mayor, we tried to look at it, only one person committed a shooting with a legally purchased guns, that we have tons of these illegal weapons pouring into our communities. Another frustration is the TR amendment. You're familiar with how local law enforcement all over this country can't understand that we can't get common sense trace data to find out where these guns are coming to try to shut off the spigot. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, Senator. And to be fair and balanced, I guess, would be the word, that there are some dealers that could be maligned by data when they're complying with all the federal laws, but just by where their business is, and they could be doing everything correctly. And I know of instances of these inspections on paper. It would take someone like yourself going, hey, Tom Brandon's gun shop had it's responsible for 1,000 guns that trace back there, and I could be doing everything correctly, and it just could be the volume that I'm doing.
Sir, but we have issues of due process. But the problem, what we're seeing is just getting basic common sense, pragmatic data is very important to solving a problem. Sure. We have agencies that have been hamstrung on their ability to get common sense data. This is not a partisan issue. You don't need to be fair and balanced. People who are trying to keep guns out of the hands of folks who are trying to do ill, they need data, they need research, they need access to information, and we're not seeing that.
No, Senator, and I feel your pain, because I've never met a person in favor of gun violence. And I will share this with you, the departments are getting the data through an individual trace. I recommend that they establish their own database. They track all that, and you would have all the data you're looking for. But we have to comply with the federal law, and that's what we do.
And the point I guess I'm trying to make in conclusion is that we, as the folks who should be trying to keep safe, should enable you with federal laws that allow you to do your job. And local police forces in small communities in my state don't have the resources to create the kind of databases at least
Right.
New York City is able to do. But we can't keep these guns off our streets because we can't get basic information so law enforcement can do their job. And I appreciate you, sir. And again, your agency is incredible. Such great officers, very brave men and women.
Senator, thank you for saying that because, and like I said previously, they're on the street right now serving warrants with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, putting their life at their line. I notified something last night, but thank you. That means hearing that from you all helps more for morale for ATF agents in the field, and so I sincerely thank you.
Ms. Posada, Mr. Petty, I was very moved by your testimony and very grateful for you all having the courage at a time of great pain in your lives and the community's lives. The agony and the trauma of what you all have been through is profound. I listened to the story, Ms. Posada, of you talking about what happens even in the aftermath, on how cheering and yelling for an NBA athlete shakes children, how a loud noise makes folks jump. And what's painful for me as I listen to this is what you're talking about is something that I experience where I live. I live in a city, low-income community where hearing gunfire is not a rare thing. And I've heard teachers tell me lots of stories about children and have parents reaching out to me that the 4th of July is not always the happiest time because of firecrackers going off and kids who are traumatized by that. I know in my personal life, with the proliferation of guns in this country, that in my neighborhood you can jog around the community and see shrines to children and teenagers murdered, teddy bears and candles. It's hard to avoid. As a mayor, I've stood on street corners with bodies still lying on the street. I've been in the aftermath of shootings, moments after they've happened. I had a gruesome experience of having a 19-year-old die as I vainly tried to stop him from bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. And I'm an adult at that point, and I was writing about this recently, and my chief of staff, I told him how, after interviewing a police officer who was there, talked about how shaken I was. He corrected me and he said, "You were shaken for a long, long time. You were different," he said to me. I hear these calls, "never again," which I agree with a lot. But the problem is it's happening every day. Every day in our country, we are having people die. At the top of my block on Monday, where I live, a young man that I know, Shahad Smith, was murdered by an automatic weapon. I talked to his mother yesterday. I'm going to the funeral on Friday. He and I lived together in a building for about almost 10 years. And his crew, his young men that he hung out in the lobby, who I used to play basketball with, just about all of them are dead right now due to gun violence. And what hurts me so much is that we don't seem to have the moral urgency to do things that we see that are obvious to do. Your testimony was painful to listen to, but here in Congress, I've been here for 5 years, multiple mass shootings, thousands of people in communities like mine have died, and we have done nothing. Not one thing. From better funding the ATF to enforce the laws that we already have, to banning weapons of mass destruction, to making universal background checks, things that are supported by over 80% of NRA members, we just haven't been able to do. And I applaud local efforts, the courage of my police officers in my city, in my state. I applaud local efforts. But so many of these changes have to happen on the national level. And so I'm going to be back in my community for yet another boy in a box where barely makes a headline, doesn't even blip on the national news. And I can tell you right now, from the 10-year-old killed in Atlantic City a couple of weeks ago, to the teenager killed in my city about a week ago, to Shahad's family. This is happening every single day. And so what I just want, maybe the only question I have for the two of you, is what do you say to a Congress? Right now, you saw how quickly the Florida legislature, at least they did something. We don't have a scheduled vote. We don't have a bill that has moved out of committee to the floor. Do you have any specific messages to the people here that are doing nothing? Because the opposite of justice is not injustice, it's inaction, it's indifference, and it's apathy. Do you have a message to this Congress who is prepared right now to do nothing in the face of the tragedies that we're seeing in your communities and mine?
Yeah, my message is this time must be different. In Florida, I learned about another part of Broward County, not Parkland, but another area, where the congressman from that district told me the bullet holes in our school are on the outside. And I committed to him to work with him to figure out how to solve those problems in his neighborhood too. I don't want a mass shooting to ever happen in a school again, but there are lots of communities that are suffering, as you mentioned, Senator Booker, that don't get on the news and don't get the attention Parkland gets. And my heart goes out to those communities. So I'm going to work with that representative. This time must be different. Focus, please, on the things that you can agree on. That was the difference in Florida. That was the difference. We didn't agree on everything. There were things that Republicans didn't like about the bill. There were things Democrats didn't like about the bill. But rather than focusing on the political differences, they focused on the common ground, and we took some ground in Florida. And I would urge the Congress here to take some ground. The Second Amendment fights, we'll continue to have those. There'll be plenty of time for those. Take the ground you can take, secure the schools, keep kids safe, keep guns away from people that shouldn't have them, and let's as Senator Blumenthal said, let's improve mental health so we can put our arms around these kids before they turn violent.
I think my message would be very similar. This is not a partisan issue. This is, the children of Republicans are not immune to bullets. Anyone can fall victim to something like this. Parkland was named on February 13th, the day before the shooting. Parkland was named the #1 safest city in the state of Florida. And the next day this happened. This could happen anywhere in the United States to anyone. And Congress, to this point, has kept allowing it to happen by their inaction. And, as you said, they are complicit. Inaction is, at this point, inexcusable. So we need to work together. I tell my students all the time, we've lost the ability, and I'm sure people in this room know it more than the average person, we've lost the ability to listen. We've lost the ability to communicate civilly with someone with whom we disagree. We are very divided, and if you disagree with me, you must be a terrible person. We've got to stop that attitude, and we've got to be able to sit down at a table across from each other and compromise on these issues, or it's never going to stop. We'll never solve this problem.